definitely believe that general advice is the place. Again, back to the personal advice, we understand that if you can provide personal advice to a customer, that's the best outcome you can. But we also understand that there's nowhere near enough advisors to speak to all the people who need some sort of advice. So right now, those individuals are just not getting any advice at all. We talked about the banks. They used to write between 5 and 600 million a year of new business. That's a lot of customers that used to get their mortgages covered and everything. And they're not. That's gone. It's not gone anywhere. I don't think it's gone to super fund. It's not contract. So I think we would be supportive of general advice. I think the key is the environment that it's provided in. And in my opinion, if it's recorded, and with AI and technology nowadays, you can pick up very, very quickly if it's gone from general advice to personal advice. And I think that's an area that as an industry we should look to have more conversations with people in that environment.
Okay, so residing within Commodore or NBS True, would a model for general advice see any fully qualified financial advisor be able to split their existing client portfolio? So this section, I only deliver general advice, and this group of clients are sufficiently of value to me that I will continue my full advice proposition? Or is it more a case of one individual is either a general advisor or a fully qualified?
Yeah, I think it would be hard to be Drew, I think one individual.
Yeah, you've got to be very cautious that a client understands that they've previously experienced personal advice and they're now exiting that world and receiving general advice. That's something to be aware of. So I wouldn't say that individuals would wear both hats. We've spoken at numerous times already today about the lack of advisors in the market. Advisors are likely trending towards higher socioeconomic clients because of the cost of advice and generally the reward of the premium. So there is a huge underserved population that used to be filled, and completely agree with you that general advice is a requirement that should be served and should be delivering absolutely to that middle of Australia. We haven't yet seen what it looks like in the rear vision mirror. We haven't yet seen what our observations might be 10 years down the track. I think a lot of those conversations that if someone says, I think I need $1 million worth of life insurance because I've got a mortgage of this and education of this, and then the other person doesn't say anything, have they then walked into implied advice by not actually addressing that sort of question or query? So the use of AI will support that. I think if you are going to enter the world of general advice, you need to be really clear around monitoring and supervision. I think it's a completely different proposition to personal advice.
Nonetheless, the benefits and value of general advice would outweigh the potential issues associated with where you draw the line between general and personal.
So having people have access to advice is better than people not having access to advice.
Need to manage where that line is drawn.
Yeah.
And how it occurs, and I think the recording aspect of it is key.
All right, so as I turn to Pina and Ben, what's the AIA experience to the extent you're able to share with regard to the growth of the general advice model delivering new business?
I mean, look, we're definitely seeing a growth in general advice advisors, and I think NNG is now starting to record that data. I think they've got about just under 20 licensees that are coming through, and they're seeing some really strong growth in that area, and we can see it as well in terms of the influx of new business. So I believe it definitely has a place. I believe that we need to really go back to, to Rebecca's point, we've got to remember the consumer, the customer at the end of the day, and really find out from the customer, how do they want to be served? What's their issue? What do they want? How do they want to be served? And they may not want to go down that full personal advice route. They might just say, I've got a mortgage of, $250,000. I want to cover that, and that's it. That's all I want to do. I'm coming to you for that, and that's it.
Right,
but I want some income protection to get on a site. That's all I want to do. So in that instance, yes, general advice could potentially serve a purpose there. I agree with Niall's point around and Drew around that supervision and monitoring. and the call recording and all of that sort of stuff. So, currently AFW does do general advice, and all of that's in place, where there's call recording, supervision, and more so, not more so, but just as much as on a personal advice front. And it should be different roles. It needs to be different people. But I like the idea of potentially in that general advice world, with those people that are delivering that, potentially they could become the new class of advisor, and then potentially into full blown. So I feel like, we're talking about the career path. We could almost sit around and go, you know what, let's create a career path. You come into the industry as an associate, potentially, where you're doing sort of implementation work alongside a financial planner. You then get into a general advice world. You then move into a class of advisor. But I still think that the education requirements and the time frame to get from here to here probably still needs to be reviewed. But we could quite nicely build out a career path.
Got that. Thank you, Bennett. Ben, anything to add? No. Right, so I'll turn to you. I'll come to Sue. Yeah, you go.
Sorry, if I may. I think the point of access is a really important one, building on a few of these points, because a lot of those consumers are self-directed. And the other channel of getting information, if it's not general advice or new class of advisor, is they're asking the ChatGPT what they should do. I think we all recognise that is getting a better response over time, but it's still very, very hit and miss. So when I think about the competing forces, is I think you said, Ben, it's not a land grab, because those self-directed consumers that's where they're going for information at the moment. And so we need to fill that part of the vacuum as much as on the advice, personalised advice.
Well, they're doing it through their industry super fund, right? Because that's where they have insurance, but then they don't think about, well, what's the long-term impact of taking out of my super, right? And that sort of stuff. So I think, out trauma insurance. Yeah.
And it's such a good point, because what we're seeing, and again through the NNG stats, is that a lot of retail insurance is actually coming out of the super fund. So they're probably, you're absolutely right. They're looking at it there, and then they're increasing or doing something, but via kind of a super fund out. So.
And what about all the books that are not advised anymore being left behind? They've had advice, and now, but no one wants to give them full advice to them. But they may have a need or a question, or can they become a geo client?
Well, I suppose that's peculiar, but
I mean, they're the people who are ringing us. They're ringing the insurers, right? I hate the term, but I know it's the term. They're all orphaned.
Previously advised.
Previously advised, and so that's exactly the proposition that we have gone to with the government. So when we started, and if I think back to over 2 years ago, with the former Assistant Treasurer and the conversations with him, he had a very clear view about how he wanted to solve for advice, and he had a very small, narrow kind of pathway of what to do. And over the last few years, he brought out his view on how we could get more advice out to Australians, which is how the new class of advisors sort of grew over time. And then we have another new Assistant Treasurer, Daniel Molino, and he's very engaged with the industry as well, and he has a real understanding of the challenge here. So I think what is good to see is that the government is aware of the challenge and is genuinely trying to work out how to solve, and is trying to listen to everybody. A version of this room, right, that goes and sits down with the Treasury in Canberra and with the politicians. And so, I think there's a great opportunity there. I think it can help to solve a range of different problems. But the kind of core thing that we know that can be solved in the short term with legislation is getting more advice to many more people. We might need to build on it over time and tweak it and make it better. And as you say, it's a starting point.
Yeah, I think the irony to this is we're all agreeing it's a relatively inactive advice landscape. Yet it's over the same period when it needed to be as active or more active than it has been in the past, with pride changes, with premier instability claims, all the stuff that we mentioned earlier. Right? So that's the challenge. The jaws are opening.
Okay, that's true. Now, I'm going to come to you, Phil, in a second, but just to complete this conversation, we sort of segue from general advice back to new class of advice. But a question to you, without notice, Keely,
Yes.
my apologies, is new class of advisor is informed by new legislation, which is yet to be released. But general advice is something that is being done now, and we've talked about the pluses outweighing the potential negatives with regard to general advice. Is this an opportunity for the industry to self-regulate and to put together some rules or parameters around the delivery of general advice, whether it's in relation to broader financial advice or life insurance advice, just so that it makes the rest of the sector, for example, advise themselves comfortable that it be done particularly in a way that has integrity?
It's a big question. So the short answer is we are, as an industry at the moment, looking at a range of things to touch on Drew's point, particularly around how do we make sure that we are delivering meaningful, affordable insurance for as many people as possible. And so we are working collectively at the moment to look at that and really face into that, within the guides of competition law to be able to solve for some of that. So I think these are the sorts of things that we will be getting to. But first, we need to be really understanding what's going on, what's driving some of these issues we've got with claims, what's happening with premium prices, all of the things we're seeing, consistently across the industry. And I think, there are opportunities. We've just, if you think about where we went to even in the super space, because you can apply it across of where we might go in the future with advisors. With the life code of practice, we brought even claims handling times. We're very transparent about how people should expect as customers to have how quickly their claims should be resolved. But what we saw then is with the claims in the superannuation space, we still had a big kind of delay before they make it to insurers. So we've done a lot of work as an industry to work in the super industry bodies, and we just had ASFA come in and worked with them on developing guidance for superannuation trustees on claims handling. So I think you can see that our approach at Caldi is to try to self-regulate where we can, and then to work with our colleagues across the ecosystem to see how do we make sure your self-regulation matches up to ours, so that we're giving customers a consistent approach and a good experience when they're engaging with our part.
Oh, okay, thank you, Keely. Now, turn to you, Phil, just for a final comment on our conversation about general advice and how that can be one part of the solution before we turn our conversation to advisor remuneration. So the most recent poll says, I'm comfortable with life insurance solutions being delivered under a general advice structure. This is an advisor poll. 57% agree. So majority, not everyone, but the greater proportion of advisors seem to be okay with general advice. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't love it. I think it's questionably legal. That talks about this Westpac case. Like the thing that hinged on it was the consumers made the assumption that there was personal information being taken into account to make the suggestion or recommendation. So I don't understand how you can give good insurance solutions through a general advice model, and if it's going to be 100% self-selected, I think consumers can go direct to the insurers if they were allowed to. If insurers could sell, that's my big point is if insurers can sell their own direct products, then we may not actually need this general advice kind of model. I think it's kind of come out of the fact that people are education standards. It's harder to deliver personal advice these days than it ever has. So a lot of advisors have transitioned into this GA model that for me, it feels like a ticking time bomb.
Okay, but would it be reasonable to suggest that your support of insurers have going direct to the consumer is something that a lot of your peers would not like?
Yeah, probably. But I think we're getting a general advice model, which if it does blow up, it's going to be advisors moving policies and chasing commissions. So we're all going to be painted in that same brush. So I do understand the concern around insurers offering products direct to our customers, but there's a massive underinsurance need. There's huge amounts of client demand, that we can't service. And my business is probably more affected than anyone else's because we work with the average Australian, average income. I love that 190k average income for our policyholders, but that's not the case. And so, yeah, I do think advisors would be concerned, but currently we're moving into this general advice kind of framework that I think if it does blow up in the future, I think that's going to cause massive issues on personal advice.
So there would be reputation issues that the industry can do without if something blows up.
Yeah.
So your counsel would seem to be hasten slowly when it comes to the progression of general advice as a solution.
Yeah, yeah.